He rode through the mist of the New World like a ghost of two empires, one that ruled the seas and one that refused to die. His name was Alonso de Ojeda, a conquistador whose blade had once glimmered in the Caribbean sun, now rusted by betrayal, pride, and the salt of forgotten tears. Some said he was cursed, not by witchcraft or superstition, but by his own defiance of the very crown that had made him a hero. The story of Ojeda is not merely one of conquest, but of obsession, the madness of a man who sought to carve his own destiny from a continent that refused to be tamed. At the turn of the 16th century, Spain stood as the undisputed master of the Atlantic. The banners of Castile and Aragon fluttered across oceans, driven by a fever of discovery and greed. The Catholic monarchs had united a fractured kingdom under one faith, one flag, and one divine purpose, to bring the world under God and gold. But beneath this glittering dream lay a web of rivalry, corruption, and ambition that devoured even the most loyal servants of the crown. In Seville's docks, ships like skeletal beasts groaned under the weight of supplies, gunpowder, wine, beads, and the rusted chains of fate. Men like Ojeda were not explorers. They were instruments, swords wrapped in silk, sent to expand a realm they would never truly belong to. Ojeda had sailed with Columbus himself. He had seen the New World first, when the Caribbean islands glowed like emeralds on a dark sea. But where Columbus saw divine prophecy, Ojeda saw opportunity. He was smaller than most men, quick and fearless, with eyes like tempered steel. To his soldiers he was a storm, to his enemies a shadow. Yet for all his courage, he carried within him a fatal flaw: pride. He refused to kneel fully before any king, mortal or divine. And in the Empire of Spain, that was a sin no man could afford. His first expeditions burned across the Caribbean like sparks across dry wood. He founded colonies that rose and fell within months, waged wars against tribes whose names history barely remembers, and filled his journals with tales of golden cities hidden beyond jungles of silence. But as the years passed, Ojeda's star dimmed. The governors who once praised him turned their backs. New conquistadors, men like Balboa and Cortés, captured the glory that had once been his. And yet, Ojeda refused to fade. In 1509, desperate to reclaim his honor, he set sail once more, this time to the wild coast of present-day Colombia, a land so dense and humid that even God seemed absent. He brought with him a royal contract that gave him authority, but no support. The crown had learned to use men like him as expendable pawns, to promise fortune while offering nothing but ruin. The colony he founded, San Sebastián de Urabá, was a vision of hell. Mosquitoes carried death, the food rotted, the native resistance was merciless. His men deserted, driven mad by hunger and fear. Still, Ojeda stood tall in his armor, refusing to surrender. One night, while leading a patrol through the mangroves, he was ambushed. A spear tore through his thigh, pinning him to the ground. He fought like a wounded animal, breaking the shaft, crawling through the mud as his blood mingled with the stagnant water. He survived, but the wound festered, rotting his flesh until he could no longer walk. The conquistador who had once ridden with kings now lay broken, dependent on the mercy of the same men he had once commanded. His partner, Francisco Pizarro, a name that would later echo through history, abandoned the colony. Ojeda was left behind, his body deteriorating, his dream dissolving into fevered visions. But even in agony, he refused to die a beggar. He ordered himself carried back to Santo Domingo, his face hollow, his armor rusted, clutching the tattered banner of Spain like a relic. There, in the colony's fading light, Ojeda did something no conquistador had done before him. He sold everything he owned, armor, horses, even his sword, to pay debts and beg forgiveness from those he had wronged. In the last months of his life, he lived not as a conqueror, but as a penitent. He would crawl, literally on his knees, from his hut to the local chapel each dawn, dragging the same leg that had once been impaled by native spears. The villagers watched in silence as the once proud soldier whispered prayers for the souls he had taken. When he finally died around 1515, no priest attended his burial. He was buried in the doorway of the small Franciscan church he had helped build, so that everyone entering would step over his grave. A man who had defied his king, defied his fate, and finally, perhaps, defied his own pride. But Ojeda's curse did not end with him. His story became a silent echo among conquistadors who followed. Balboa, Cortez, Pizarro, each would rise higher than Ojeda ever did, and each would fall, devoured by the same empire they had served. Spain's conquest of the Americas was not a tale of heroes, but of ghosts. Every victory carved new wounds. Every gold-laden ship carried whispers of rebellion. Historians often speak of empires as eternal, but in truth, they are built upon men like Ojeda, ambitious, brilliant, and fatally human. His defiance was not of the crown alone. It was a rebellion against the idea that destiny could be owned, bought, or decreed. He embodied the paradox of the age of discovery, a man seeking freedom through conquest, salvation through violence. In the end, his tragedy was Spain's own, an empire that sought to conquer the world but lost its soul in the process. The conquistadors, hailed as bringers of civilization, were themselves enslaved to greed, to pride, to the illusion of divine purpose. And as centuries passed, the lands they claimed began to whisper back. The jungles reclaimed their ruins, the gold melted into myth, and the names of conquerors eroded from stone. Standing at the threshold of history, one can almost see Ojeda's shadow kneeling before that small chapel door, his voice lost beneath the tropical rain. Perhaps in that moment, he understood what neither kings nor empires could. That conquest was never victory, only exile. The curse of Alonso de Ojeda was not that he defied his king, but that he believed he could ever serve him faithfully in a world where loyalty was a weapon and glory a mirage. His story, like so many born of the New World, ends not with triumph, but with a quiet surrender to the vast, indifferent silence of time. And there, in that silence, the true empire begins, not of Spain, nor of gold, but of memory.